you've already written your first program, this is it, but we can't see anything happen. There are three things happening so far in this program. The first line says, go to this library and fetch the turtle book, this book that has lots of commands inside. And on the next line, we've done two things on this line. First, let's look at what's after the equals. We picked up the book we just brought, opened it, and looked inside this book, and there was a command somewhere inside, turtle with a capital T, with an uppercase T. And we're telling Python, look, you know that command? The parentheses means do this command, and this creates a turtle. So it's creating what we will in the future call an object within our program. And this object has certain properties. It's a turtle. We'll see it's going to be able to move forward, turn left, and do all sorts of things that turtles can do. But this idea of creating an object that has certain properties, we will see it elsewhere in Python. In fact, it's everywhere in Python. Everything we create is going to be an object of some shape or form. But for now, the object we have is this turtle thing. But we didn't just create the object, which is what the highlighted text does. We also gave it a name. So from now on, this object we created, we're calling it Fred. However, this is the end of our program. So when I ran this file, Python ran through it, it created Fred, it very briefly showed me Fred on the screen, but it was so quick I couldn't see it. Why? Because then we reached the end of the program. And the end of the program means I'm going to pack everything up and go away. That's what Python is telling me. So whenever we have something dealing with graphics, we need to find a way of keeping the program open. And in the turtle book, we have a command called turtle.done. And we'll always put this at the end of our program. So you can see I've added a few blank lines. This is the last line I need in my program, which means wait, keep everything running until I stop the program. And see what's going to happen when I run the program now. Well, there it is. I have a window. I did promise you this is going to be about graphics. So every time we run a code, we're going to have a window pop up with some graphics on it. Now, this is not the most exciting graphics you'll ever see. What do I see there? I see an arrow. That arrow represents my turtle. We will make it look like a turtle later, but there's a reason why it's showing us an arrow. What matters is, where is the turtle in the middle of the screen? Where is it facing? In this case, it's facing right. So for the time being, that is Fred, our turtle, sitting in the middle of the screen, pointing to the right, waiting for us to tell him what to do. So turtle.done is a line that we're going to always put at the end of our programs using turtle. This applies for graphics programs. It doesn't apply for non-graphics programs because in those instances, the program does what it has to do and then it can finish. But with a graphics program, we want the window to stay open for us to be able to see it and admire it and maybe interact with it later on. Good. Let's speed a bit now. We've created a turtle. We've called him Fred. What can Fred do? Fred, you can see there's no red line now. In fact, if I run this, I do not get an error because now Python knows who Fred is. Incidentally, what happens if I type in Fred there? You can see the red line has magically appeared now. Let me run the file. Now I get the error. On line 3, Fred, name Fred is not defined. Now you might think, come on, dear Python, you can see I'm defining it there, but this is one of the things we'll learn very quickly. Python is working sequentially, right? So when it's on line 3, by the time it's on line 3, it doesn't know who Fred is or what Fred is. Therefore, it gives you the error. It doesn't matter, it's been defined later. So let's see what Fred can do. Now, you may remember this dot. There are quite a few punctuation marks we're going to learn very quickly in Python. The parentheses, the round brackets at the end, we've already seen them twice. Notice that turtle.done also has them. They mean do this command now. The dot, for the time being, here's a good way of thinking about the dot. It's a way of connecting things together. So in this case, it's connecting the name of the book that we brought from library with what's inside it. In this case, the command turtle with capital T that creates this turtle object. I can do the same with Fred. Now we know, my program knows that Fred is a turtle. It's this turtle object I created. So when I say Fred dot, and you can see that PyCharm is going to give me things like, it's going to show me there, let me do it, lots of things that Fred can do. that turtles can do. And I'm going to start with forward. Now you may notice there are, from the olden days when people didn't like to type lots, there are things like FD, but really we prefer to use the full word forward. It makes your code easier to read, easier to understand. So I would shy away from these shorthand versions that make the code more obscure. Forward it is. And you may have noticed there, let me do it again, that when I started typing forward and hit enter, autocomplete not only filled in the word forward, but put these parentheses at the end. Remember, this means do this command now. Here's a problem, however. Let me run the file. I get an error on line 5. And don't worry too much about the error messages. These are things we will learn more and more as we go further in this course and in future courses. The problem here is that we can see there it needs distance. So this particular command, unlike turtle and done, this needs some extra bit of information. And where do I put that information? Within the parentheses. So the parentheses serve two purposes, if you like. They're a way of telling Python, do this command and do it now. But if the command, we will call these functions or methods, but for the time being, it doesn't matter what they are. They're an instruction for Fred. If they need more information, this extra information goes in the brackets. For example, 100 pixels. And now you can see that Fred has moved forward by 100 pixels. So you get the idea of what's happening. And now very quickly, I'm going to give you a few more commands that turtles can do. Remember, the aim here is not to learn the turtle module. We're using the turtle module as a tool. It's to learn how Python works, how Python sees these things. So in this case, it sees Fred, who is a turtle. Turtles can do a number of things like go forward. And then the parentheses 100 says, this is the information I want you to send to forward. This is how much I want you to turn Fred, to move Fred forward. Fred.left at 90 degrees. And you can see that now Fred has turned by 90 degrees. You get the idea. We have lots of these commands that will allow us to move this turtle around, and we will have lots of flexibility on how we want to change this drawing. Let me show you one more. For example, Fred.pensize. And this needs the thickness of the line, 10. But if I run this code now, I don't see any difference. Why? Because the order matters, the order of instructions matters. So I have asked Fred to go forward, he did that. Then I asked Fred to turn left, he did that. Then I asked Fred to change the thickness of the lines he's going to draw, but this will only affect whatever comes afterwards. So it didn't affect the first line, but it will affect if I go forward now. And you can see that the line that's drawn after I said change the pen size to 10 is thicker because it has a thicker line width. We're getting a sense of how we can communicate with Python. Let's keep going. Let's add more and start making this even more interesting.